The bold and the beautiful. Brooke and Ridge's wedding shattered almost drops a bombshell. Taylor's overdose sparks Forrester crisis. The day was supposed to be perfect. The sun streamed through the stained glass windows of the Forrester estate. Candles flickered. Flowers lined the aisle in delicate creams and blush pinks. Cameras rolled. Guests whispered with anticipation. Brooke Logan stood at the altar in a flawless designer gown, her eyes locked on Ridge Forrester. It was supposed to be a reunion, a restoration, a vow to never break again. Ridge, in a crisp black tuxedo, smiled back, his voice thick with emotion as he prepared to recite his vows. But before he could speak, Brooke began her soft, tearful, full of history. Every word carried the weight of decades of passion, betrayal, forgiveness, and hope. But she never finished, because that's when the doors slammed open. Thomas Forrester burst through, wild-eyed, breathless, his voice a raw scream. "Stop the wedding! Dad Taylor's dying. She took pills, overdosing. She's in critical condition." Gasps rippled through the room. Phones dropped. A bridesmaid stifled a scream. Ridge went pale. For a moment, time stood still. Brooke's hands shook. "What?" she whispered. Thomas, trembling, held up his phone an audio message from a panicked nurse at the emergency room. She was brought in alone. "Pills. Unconscious. Stable for now, but it's serious. They think it was deliberate." And just like that, the wedding was over? Ridge didn't ask questions. He didn't look back. He dropped the ring, turned on his heel, and sprinted out of the church. Guests parted like the Red Sea. Brooke stood frozen, lips parted mid-vow, bouquet trembling in her hands. She stepped off the altar, heart pounding, and rushed after him. But Steffi Forrester was already there blocking the exit. "Don't you dare," she hissed. Her voice wasn't raised, but it was lethal. "Haven't you done enough, Brooke? She didn't do this out of nowhere. She broke because of you. Every single time my mother starts to heal, you drag her down again. You ruin her. And now she tried to end her life while you're standing in a white dress stealing her future. Steffi, please," Brooke begged. "I didn't know. I never wanted you." "Never stop," Steffi snapped. "You never care who gets destroyed as long as Ridge chooses you." "Well, congratulations." "My mother's on a ventilator." The church fell into chaos. Paparazzi who'd been invited to cover the fairytale wedding now rushed to report on its collapse. Guests whispered into phones. Family members ushered the press out. Hope and Liam looked on in stunned silence. Carter attempted to maintain order, but there was nothing left to salvage. Forrester PR was in freefall before the newlyweds could even say "I do." Headlines hit within the hour. Ridge Forrester abandons bride at altar. Taylor Hayes hospitalized in shocking suicide attempt. Forrester wedding becomes scandal of the year. Reporters circled the estate. Social media lit up in a frenzy. Stockholders called emergency meetings. At the hospital, Ridge arrived just as Taylor was being wheeled out of the trauma bay. Pale. Motionless. A doctor pulled him aside, soft voice, clinical words. "She's alive." But the level of sedatives she took. If we hadn't found her in time, Ridge's world tilted. "How bad is it?" he whispered. The doctor hesitated. "We're worried about permanent neurological impact. We won't know the extent until she regains consciousness. There may be memory gaps, mood instability, possible long-term damage to her ability to process emotional trauma." Ridge sat in the hallway for hours, alone, silent, tormented. Back at Forrester Creations, the fallout had already begun. Eric Forrester slammed shut the blinds to his office. "This can't be happening," he muttered, reading a dozen news alerts at once. "We were to minutes from turning this wedding into a legacy campaign." He looked up at his team. Hope, Zende, Carter, RJ, all gathered with grim faces. Hope stepped forward. "We need to distance Hope for the future immediately." Press releases, statements. "If the media drags us into the scandal, the brand's dead," Carter nodded. "And if Taylor dies or suffers permanent damage, There's not a single way to frame this as romantic or noble. Eric slammed his fist on the table. We're not framing anything. We're saving a family, but saving the family was already slipping through their fingers. Brooke arrived at the hospital too late to see Ridge. He had locked himself in Taylor's room. She stood outside, holding the engagement ring he dropped at the altar. Her mascara streaked, her dress wrinkled. But Steffi was there again, stone-faced, arms crossed. "Go home, Brooke," she said coldly. "I love him," Brooke whispered. "He left you," Steffi replied, voice flat. "When he had to choose between his bride and my mother, he chose the woman you spent your life trying to erase. I didn't know she was hurting this badly. That's the problem," Steffi snapped. "You never see anyone's pain but your own." In Taylor's room, Ridge sat beside her, holding her hand. Machines beeped softly. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. The woman he had loved for years, his oldest confidant, his first great love, was barely holding on. And he blamed himself. If he hadn't rushed back into Brooke's arms, if he had noticed Taylor pulling away, if he'd stayed with the family just a little longer. He wept. Thomas stood in the hospital corridor, face haunted. For once, his interference wasn't manipulation, it was desperation. "I just wanted to stop the wedding," he confessed with stunned Paris. "I thought if Dad knew how badly she was hurting, he'd reconsider. I didn't think she'd do that." Paris didn't respond. What could she say? The wreckage Thomas caused, no matter the motive, was real. The wedding was in ruins, the family torn apart, and Taylor might never come back the same. Back at Forrester, the press refused to let the story die. Gossip blogs exploded with speculation. Did Taylor really attempt suicide, or was it a stunt to win Ridge back? Was Thomas lying? Was Brooke faking her heartbreak for sympathy? Anonymous staff leaks hinted at behind-the-scenes fighting. Even former Forrester employees gave interviews, reviving old dirt, old affairs, old rivalries. Legal teams drafted statements. Publicists held briefings. Contracts were reviewed, endorsements suspended. Retailers demanded clarity before continuing business. The company's image of house that fashion built was now the face of a public mental health crisis and family implosion. Steffi and Thomas rallied around their mother. Ridge barely left Taylor's side. Brooke, shut out, returned home alone. She stood in her living room, still in her wedding dress, staring at her reflection, trying to understand how everything fell apart in less than 5 minutes. The silence was deafening. Hope visited Brooke that evening. "You didn't do this," she tried to say. But Brooke couldn't hear it. Because maybe she had. Maybe Steffi was right. Maybe all the years of taking, of winning, of being chosen made that left nothing but ruin in her wake. And as night fell over Los Angeles, Ridge watched as doctors adjusted Taylor's medication. Her heart monitor beeped steadily. But her mind, her soul, her spark, those were still in the dark. He was caught. Between love and guilt. Between two women, two lives, two truths. His bride waited in silence. His path lay in a hospital bed. His children looked to him for direction. His company teetered on the edge of collapse. The wedding was dead. And the Forrester family may never be the same again. The bold and the beautiful. The forged letter that shattered a family. Thomas exposed, Brooke fights back. And Ridge faces the ultimate truth in the fragile aftermath of the disastrous Brooke Ridge wedding, after the chaos, the betrayal, and the hospital tragedy. A new bombshell dropped down that didn't just reopen wounds but threatened to rip the Forrester family apart entirely. As Taylor Hayes lay unconscious in a recovery ward following her devastating suicide attempt, Thomas Forrester arrived at the hospital with a letter he claimed had been written by Taylor herself shortly before she took the pills. It was handwritten, emotional, and dripping with anguish. The letter named Brooke Loganid addiction, not depression, as the reason Taylor had lost the will to live. The note was brief, but it hit like a truck. "All these years, I've fought for scraps of happiness, and she always takes them away. Ridge was my light and she dimmed it again. I can't keep doing this. I'm tired of the pain. I'm tired of watching her win. Those were the words written in Taylor's familiar cursive, but the last line, potentially the most important, was torn. A jagged edge, a missing thought. Thomas claimed it had been damaged during his frantic rush to the hospital. He handed it to Ridge in silence, and Ridge, already drowning in guilt and emotional paralysis, read every word like scripture. The weight of the letter crushed him. He felt like a murderer, like a coward, like a fool for ever walking down the aisle with Brooke while Taylor spiraled in silence. If she had really written this before her overdose, then she hadn't just been hurting, she had been broken. And in Ridge's mind, there was only one person to blame: Brooke. He refused to take her calls. He refused to see her. When she appeared at the hospital with flowers, Steffi blocked her again. "You've done enough," Steffi snapped. "Read the letter if you want to know why we don't want you here." And Brooke did. She read it. She cried. But she didn't believe it. Not entirely. Because something didn't feel right. Taylor had battled heartbreak before. She had seen Ridge choose Brooke dozens of times. She had suffered. But she was also a psychiatrist, a healer, a woman with strength beneath the scars. The tone of the letter, while emotional, felt off, too clean, too targeted, too useful, especially for Thomas. Brooke voiced her doubts to Hope, who urged her to leave it alone. "It's not the time to play detective," Hope warned. "It's about healing now, not proving a point." But Brooke wasn't interested in winning points. She wanted the truth. Because if Thomas had fabricated that letter, if he had tampered with Taylor's final thoughts to manipulate Ridge, it wouldn't just be cruel. It would be criminal. She needed help. And surprisingly, help came from someone unexpected: Carter Walton. Carter had officiated the wedding. He had watched it crumble in real time. And like everyone else, he had read the letter. But he'd also seen Thomas that morning outside the Forrester office, pacing nervously on a call. Carter had chalked it up to pre-wedding tension. But now, he wasn't so sure. He offered Brooke discreet assistance. "If there's something here," he said, "we'll find it." And they did. With quiet persistence and careful access to legal contacts, Carter traced a call log from Thomas's phone, a call placed to a private prescribing physician less than 48 hours before Taylor's overdose. The same physician who, according to hospital records, had authorized a refill of sedatives that Taylor had not requested herself. Carter dug deeper. He found a digital request that matched Thomas's IP address, an illegal impersonation. It was enough to raise the alarm. Carter confronted Thomas privately, hoping for a confession. But Thomas denied everything. "I was trying to help her," he said coldly. "She needed rest. She wasn't sleeping. I didn't think she'd do something reckless. And that letter? That's hers. I didn't write it. She did. And it's not my fault Brooke drove her to it." But the evidence was piling up. A handwriting analysis discreetly by Carter confirmed that while the letter was in Taylor's handwriting, certain lines showed signs of unnatural pressure and inconsistency, likely traced or manipulated. And the torn section at the bottom, under blacklight, faint imprints of the original writing, revealed a heartbreaking contradiction. The real final line had not been a condemnation of Brooke at all. It had read, "But maybe I'm the one who's broken. Maybe I've carried this hurt for too long." Thomas had torn it off, deliberately, rewriting Taylor's pain into a weapon against Brooke. The moment the truth broke, it spread like wildfire. Carter, unable to stomach the lie, brought it to Ridge himself. The confrontation was devastating. "You lied to me," Ridge said, his voice hollow, shaking. "You took your mother's lowest moment and turned it into a tool to ruin Brooke, to control me. You used her pain to punish everyone." Thomas didn't deny it. "You were about to make the biggest mistake of your life again. She was dying inside, Dad. And you were giving your heart away to the woman who's tormented her for 30 years. I just pushed you to see what you refused to." Ridge couldn't breathe. He looked at the letter again. At the edge, still frayed. The missing words. The ink. The lie. If that letter never existed, he asked, would I still have left Brooke? Would I have still chosen Taylor? Or did you make that choice for me? The question echoed in the room. Meanwhile, the Forrester family fractured. Steffi initially refused to believe it. Thomas wouldn't do that. He wouldn't forge something from our mother's soul. But when the handwriting analysis came out, when the call logs were leaked to the press, even she couldn't defend him. Ridge disowned him again. Taylor, recovering at last, was told the truth in cautious fragments. Her face crumpled when she heard. My son used my pain to destroy another woman, she whispered. He exploited my despair and twisted it to score points in this endless war. And Brooke vindicated, furious, but emotionally destroyed faced the world in silence. The media was already turning. Brooke Logan framed by forged suicide letter, the headline screamed. Public opinion began to shift in her favor. But it wasn't enough. She had lost Ridge again. Not to love but to a lie. Forrester Creations faced legal fallout. Investors demanded transparency. Lawyers debated whether Thomas's forgery constituted corporate liability. If he'd used Forrester resources to manipulate Ridge's decision-making, it could impact contracts, campaigns, partnerships. It wasn't just a family scandal, it was a ticking bomb in the middle of the company's foundation. Thomas was removed from all active projects, his shares frozen, his access revoked. He walked out of the building alone. No one followed. And Ridge. He sat in his office staring at the torn edge of a letter that never should have existed. He replayed the wedding, the vows, the kiss that never came, the run to the hospital, the tears, the guilt, all of it built on a lie. And now he had to face the one question that would haunt him forever. If Thomas hadn't faked that letter, would I still have chosen Taylor? Or was I just looking for a reason to run? Either way, the answer no longer mattered, because now everyone had lost.